In the name of Almighty God, I am Mahsa Hassankashi, and today I want to talk about Nilearn and convolutional neural network for brain analysis. Nilearn enables approachable and versatile analysis of brain volumes and surfaces. It provides statistical and machine learning tools with instructive documentation and open community. It supports general linear model or GLM based analysis and leverage the scikit-learn Python toolbox for multivariate statistics with applications such as predictive modeling, classification, decoding, or connectivity analysis. Nilearn enables approachable and versatile analysis of brain volumes and surfaces. And for glass brain plotting, explore how to retrieve data and plot whole brain cuts in glass model. And the next approach is computing a connectome with a sparse inverse covariance. Construct a functional connectome using this sparse inverse covariance and display the corresponding graph and matrix. The next is making surface plot of a three-dimensional statistical map. Project a three-dimensional statistical map onto a cortical mesh and display the surface map as PNG or in interactive model. The next approach or solution is introduction tutorial to fMRI decoding or functional MRI. Learn to perform decoding, which Nilearn reproduced the Huxby 2001 study on a face versus cat discrimination task in a mask of the ventral stream. The next one is voxel-based morphometry on OSIS dataset. Study the relationship between aging and gray matter density using data from the OSIS project. The next one is clustering method to learn a brain parcellation from fMRI. Use spatially constrained word clustering, k-means, hierarchical k-means, and recursive neighbor agglomeration to create a set of parcels and display them. The next one is driving spatial maps from group functional MRI data using ICA and dictionary learning. Drive spatial maps or networks from group functional MRI data using two popular decomposition methods, ICI and dictionary learning on data of children and young adults watching movies. The next one is decoding with frame, face versus house object recognition. Use fast assembling of regularized models to decode a face versus house discrimination tasks from Huxby 2000 study. The next one is searchlight analysis of face versus house recognition. First, a classifier a large amount of times in order to distinguish between face and house-related cortical areas. And the next important library and feature is NumPy.org. NumPy.org is a community of practice devoted to the use of the Python programming language in the analysis of neuroimaging data. You can find it in from GitHub as well as the social media, and it is welcome contribution and ask that you read about the standard of conduct. And now I want to talk about the convolutional neural network and how we can detect and realize the specific part of the brain. A convolutional neural network or CNN is a type of free feed-forward neural network that learns features via filter or kernel optimization. This type of deep learning network has been applied to process and make predictions from many different types of data, including text, images, and audio. CNNs are de facto standard in deep learning-based approaches to computer vision and image processing, and have only recently been replaced in some cases by newer deep learning architecture such as the transformer. Vanishing gradients and exploding gradients seen during backpropagation in earlier neural networks are prevented by the regularization that comes from using shared weights over fewer connections. For example, for each neuron in the fully connected layer, 10,000 weights would be required for processing an image size 100 multiplied by 100 pixels. However, applying cascaded convolution or cross-correlation kernels, only 25 weights for each convolutional layer are required to process 5 multiplied 5 size tiles. Higher layer features are extracted from the wider context windows compared to lower layer features. And some applications of convolutional neural network include: the first one is image and video recognition, the next one is recommender systems, the third one is image classification, the fourth one is image segmentation, the fifth one is medical image analysis, and the sixth one is natural language processing. The seventh one is brain computer interfaces, and the last one is financial time series. Convolutional neural networks are also known as shift-invariant or space-invariant artificial neural networks, based on the shared weight architecture of the convolution kernels or filters that slide along input features and provide translation equivariant responses known as feature maps. Counterintuitivity: most convolutional neural networks are not invariant to translation due to the downsampling operation they apply to the input. Feed-forward neural networks are usually fully connected networks, that is, each neuron is in one layer is connected to all neurons in the next layers. The full connectivity of these networks makes them prone to overfitting data. Typical ways of regularization or preventing overfitting include penalizing parameters during training, such as weight decay or trimming connectivity, skipped connections, dropout, etc. Robust datasets also increase the probability that convolutional neural networks will learn the generalized principles that characterize a given dataset rather than the basis of a poorly populated set. Convolutional neural networks were inspired by biological processes in that the connectivity pattern between neurons resembles the organization of the animal visual cortex. Individual cortical neurons respond to the stimuli only in a restricted region of the visual field known as the receptive field. The receptive field of different neurons partially overlaps such that they over they cover the entire visual field. Convolutional neural networks use relatively little preprocessing compared to other image classification algorithms. This means that the network learns to optimize the filters or kernels through automated learning, whereas in traditional algorithms, these filters are hand engineered. This simplifies and automates the process, enhancing efficiency and scalability, overcoming human intervention and bottlenecks. And what about the architecture? The convolutional neural networks consists of an input layer, hidden layers, and an output layer. In a convolutional neural network, the hidden layers include one or more layers that perform convolutions. Typically, this includes a layer that performs a dot product of the convolutional kernel with the layer's input matrix. This product is usually the Frobenius inner product, and its activation function is commonly rel loop, which means regularization. As the convolutional kernel slides along the input matrix for the layer, the convolutional operation generates a feature map, which in turn contributes to the input of the next layer. This is followed by other layers such as pooling layers, fully connected layers, and normalization layers. Here it should be noted how close a convolutional neural network is to be matched filter. And what about the convolutional layers? In a convolutional neural network, the input is a tensor with shape, number of inputs multiplied by input height, multiplied by input width, and multiplied by input channels. After passing through a convolutional layer, the image becomes abstracted to a feature map, also called an activation map, with shape. Convolutional layers convolve the input and pass its result to the next layer. This is similar to the response of a neuron in the visual cortex to a specific stimulus. Each convolutional neuron processes data only for its receptive field. Although fully connected feed-forward neural networks can be used to learn features and classify data. This architecture is generally impractical for large input, for example, high-resolution images, which would require massive numbers of neurons because each pixel is a relevant input feature. A fully connected layer for an image of size 100 multiplied by 100 has 10,000 weights for each neuron in the second layer. Convolution reduces the number of free parameters, allowing the network to be deeper, for example, using a 5 multiplied by 5 tiling region, each with the same shared weights require only 25 neurons. Using shared weights means there are many fewer parameters, which helps avoid the vanishing gradients and exploding gradients problems seen during backpropagation in earlier neural networks. To speed processing, standard convolutional layers can be replaced by depth-wise separable convolutional layers, which are based on a depth-wise convolution followed by a point-wise convolution. The depth-wise convolution is a spatial convolution applied independently over each channel of the input tensor, while the point-wise convolution is a standard convolution restricted to the use of 1 multiplied by 1 kernels. And what about the pooling layers? Convolutional networks may include local and or global pooling layers along the traditional convolutional layers. Pooling layers reduce the dimensions of data by combining the outputs of neuron clusters at one layer into a single neuron in the next layer. Local pooling combines small clusters. Tiling sizes such as 2 multiplied by 2 are commonly used. Global pooling acts on all the neurons of the features map. There are two common types of pooling in popular use: max and average. Max pooling uses the maximum value of each local cluster of neurons in the feature map, while average pooling takes the average value. And what about the fully connected layers? Fully connected layers connect every neuron in one layer to every neuron in another layer. It is the same as the traditional multi-layer perceptron neural network or MLP. The Flattering matrix goes through a fully connected layer to classify the image. And what about the receptive field? In a neural networks, each neuron receives input from some number of locations in the previous layer. In a convolutional layer, each neuron receives input from only a restricted area of the previous layer called the neuron receptive field. Typically, the area is a square, for example, 5 by 5 neurons, whereas in a fully connected layer, the receptive field is the entire previous layer. Thus, in each convolutional layer, each neuron takes input from a larger area in the input than previous layers. This is due to applying the convolutional over and over. which takes the value of a pixel into account as well as its surrounding pixels. When using dilated layers, the number of pixels in the receptive field remains constant, but the field is more sparsely populated as its dimension grows when combining the effect of the several layers. And what about the applications? The first application is image recognition. Convolutional neural networks are often used in image recognition systems. In 2012, an error rate of 0.23% on a MNIST database was reported. Another paper on using convolutional neural networks for image classification reported that the learning process was surprisingly fast. In the same paper, the best published results as of the 2011 were achieved in the MNIST database and the NORM database. Subsequently, a similar CNN called AlexNet won the ImageNet Large-Scale Visual Recognition Challenge 2012. And thank you so much for watching my tutorial video until the end. And also you can download this Python code from github.com/masterscript.